Hi, friends, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Self Meet Soul, a podcast where we discuss how to discover what sets your soul on fire and modern ways to integrate spirituality into your daily life. My name is Juliana, and in today's episode, we're going to be chatting about what the stars have in store for us this year with a 2026 astrology report. Our guest today is an esoteric astrologist and founder of Moon Valley Astrology, where she empowers individuals to use tools to build their own astrology practice to live in sync with the signs. Kat Myles is here to share her wisdom on the planetary shifts and how they'll impact you. Welcome to the show, Kat.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, so happy to have you here. And before we get into today's topic, I want to know, what is something that lights up your soul?
So, automatically, when you asked me this question, astrology. Astrology really lights up my soul. But not just that, really. I've always really had a connection to the sun and the stars and the moon, and really just feeling like we're part of something bigger. So ever since I was little, I would just be fascinated by, what's going on up there and really feeling this pull. Even before I knew about astrology, I could really sense that we are connected to this larger network of energy and connection. And I didn't know when I was little it would lead me to becoming an astrologer, but here we are.
She's living in her dharma and her purpose.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, even further than that, it's really about connecting to nature's rhythms and the seasons, how things really change and everything has a natural progression and evolution. And I really just love finding meaning and connection in it all.
Definitely. And I feel too, like the more you kind of get into just not even just astrology, but like you mentioned, the cyclical patterns and like the natural rhythms of nature, you notice how a lot of things, the way our society is set up is kind of contradictory to that. So I'm sure you've learned a lot about that as it goes. And I'm sure we'll get into that today as well, since it's a new year.
Yes, exactly. I'm really excited to get into it. And a really big part of that is because life is not linear. We kind of start the year, society starts the year with a Gregorian calendar in January. And we have this kind of like mile marker at the beginning. And we just kind of fit as much as we can into this year. And in December, it's like, okay, that's the end. And great, we're marking a new beginning. But really, how it is for me and how I practice astrology and live in sync with the signs in my own life is recognizing these cyclical patterns and understanding that there is a season and a phase to everything, natural beginning and then this progression and acceleration, and then we reach this peak moment. And then things really start to kind of slow down and wane. And then we have this period of stillness and reflection before we actually get started with that new beginning as well. So I really do like to emphasize the cyclical nature of these patterns, especially again as it relates to astrology and the way it translates into our day-to-day life, instead of this linear model that I feel like introduces a lot of pressure and discomfort and misalignment from what is most natural to us and what is aligned to the way that we are meant to move and navigate through life, for sure.
Definitely. Well, thank you. Now, to get us started here, diving into our kind of overview for the year, and we'll kind of get into more of the specifics as we go on here. But just looking at 2026 as a whole, are we from a planetary astrology perspective, are we entering a new chapter, or are we continuing one that's already in motion?
So it's really exciting because we are entering into a new chapter in 2026 that actually has already started in 2025. We're going to see within the next few weeks and the next few months some major planetary shifts and transits that we already had the prequel for in 2025. We're going to have Saturn moving into Aries and Neptune moving into Aries, both from Pisces. And this is such a big deal because these are our outer planets and they're considered our generational planets because they're further removed from the sun, which means they take longer in their orbit. And for Saturn, it's about a 30-year cycle. And for Neptune, it's over a 150-year cycle. And it's really significant because both of these outer planets are moving from Pisces, which is the final sign and the end of the zodiac, into Aries, which is this very brand new beginning energy. And it's extremely rare for these to be occurring so close to one another. Neptune's going to be doing the first entry into Aries on January 20th. And then Saturn is going to be entering Aries on February 13th. So it's just a few weeks in between. And so we're really feeling a lot of collective endings, but also collective beginnings. And yeah, this has actually started last year, and then they both went retrograde back into Pisces for a little bit. And, we had to kind of clear some stuff up there, make sure we have everything that we need before we move forward. And yeah, it's all new beginnings, like never before seen. We're going to start seeing things that we really haven't experienced yet in our lifetimes. It's also really exciting because we are the ones who get to experience this shift. Our souls chose to come to planet Earth and be alive and experience this transition. And that's what I'm really excited to see as well, too.
Yes, that's awesome. When you were saying that, that kind of reminded me. I don't know if you've seen that meme where it was kind of during like COVID and everything, where it was like, I'm kind of tired of going through like never before seen experiences. Is that, I kind of got scared when you said that. Like a new chapter can be a good thing, but I was like, what's happening? Not another like global pandemic, hopefully.
Definitely not like another pandemic. That's not what I'm necessarily referring to, but definitely just a new way of seeing things and doing things. Our perspectives are shifting. I feel like over the last couple years, when we've been dealing with these outer planets, moving through the final degrees of the Pisces zodiac sign, a lot has been really revealed to us. A lot of things have, come to light, come to the surface. A lot of things have been exposed, things that really, once they've come out of the shadows, they're not really able to go back into hiding, because now that we've seen them, we're able to recognize that. And it's really been able to inform us on what things we're wanting to shift and change and do differently. And I think this has really supported us in realigning with our passions and our purpose and really what we're here to do on this planet during our lifetime. But also, it's not for everyone. So I don't necessarily see this shift being, for everyone alive on Earth. I feel like this has really kind of created this split in collective consciousness where the people who have really been aligning themselves with what is true to them and their souls and their purpose are really going to be seeing the benefits of these shifts, because it's kind of been like we've been preparing and training for this time to arrive. And then on the other side is kind of like those who really have sit still and complacent and haven't really involved themselves in what lights them up, what their purpose is, what they're passionate about, and they're kind of still in this like mundane stage of being. And so it's going to be really interesting for us to navigate the world together. And that's kind of what I'm meaning when I'm saying like never before seen. It's just going to be very different ways of how we're going to be interacting with one another and what we're all going to be able to create and realize together as that collective, even though we might be at different levels of consciousness, awareness, and interest in what we're wanting to see in the future that we're building.
Yes. You mentioned it too. Well, that's good to know about it moving into Pisces, or not Pisces, Aries as well. And what I've been seeing a lot, and this isn't as much as like, I don't know what most people consider the traditional astrology that we see per se. But what I've been seeing a lot at the end of the year was that 2025 was like year of the snake, which is a different kind of energy. And now we're moving into the year of the horse, which is also a 1 year in numerology, which symbolizes those new beginnings and just fresh starts. Does that kind of outlook mean anything to you? And if so, like, how does it tie into your type of astrology?
Okay, so these are really great questions. I love it. So basically, what we're seeing is like cycles within cycles. So, what we're seeing with the transition from 2025 being a 9 year into 2026 being a 1 year is numerology. So that is one cycle. And then the transition from the wood snake year to the fire horse year is actually the Chinese zodiac. And so we're still actually at the end of this cycle where the Chinese zodiac doesn't actually start over until the lunar new year because it also works with the lunar calendar. And that's going to begin on February 17th. So we still actually have about a month left in the year of the snake. And so, I love how it all really comes together because we're dealing with this transition from this year of 2025 to 2026. If you add up the numbers, they equal 9 and then 1. And so with the 9 year, it really represents this huge ending of a 9 year cycle. So we've been seeing a lot of cycles completing, a lot of closure, a lot of endings, a lot of things really coming up to surface to be revealed. But in relation to the energy of the snake is, what we're really shedding, what we're really leaving behind, what we're really clearing space for as we enter this 1 year, because that's all about new beginnings and a fresh burst of energy and renewal. And so it's been really important for all of us to make sure that we're clearing enough space for all of the things that we're wanting to introduce into this new cycle. And this isn't even going to be in this next year, but really also in the next 9 years as well too, which is so cool to see and be a part of as well too. And then, in terms of the Chinese zodiac, with this year of the snake, we are really still shedding that final layer. And something that I've learned from one of my former coaches is when a snake sheds their skin, it actually, the last part to shed is from the head and from the eyes, which actually like sounds really crazy and like really weird to say out loud too. So we are in this final shedding moment, which can actually be the most painful and the most uncomfortable. And like, as I'm speaking on it, I'm even feeling that energy of like, oh, like it's kind of cringy, but it's also really exciting too, because once we have finally completed this year of the snake, we will be going into the year of the horse and the element of fire. And this is really exciting because it's going to promote endurance and strength and courage and really like setting our sights on what our goals are. I'm really just visualizing like at the racetracks, and they have the pistol and it's like, okay, we're off to the races. And like once that pistol fires, it's like, okay, ready, set, go, and so it definitely is a huge difference and transition, coming out of this 9 year, this snake year of shedding skins and endings and closing cycles. And then also this 1 year of new beginnings, new opportunities, more space for these things to come into our experience. And then pairing it with this energy of fire, which also really promotes passion and action and movement. And the horse energy of bravery and strength and fortitude moving forward is we're definitely going to have more energy to move forward in this year. We're going to have more confidence. We're going to have more just like, certainty on what we're heading towards. And even if we're in a space of like, I don't really know what's coming next, it's like we're at least going to have the energy to fuel us and allow us to take those next steps forward. And it's really exciting because we're definitely in the in between right now. So it's a little bit hard to it's kind of hard to navigate that in between of like, okay, big endings and big new beginnings while some of these cycles are still completing while other cycles are starting up right now. But it is really interesting. And that's why I say like cycles within cycles. You know, how this ties into my type of astrology. I really practice esoteric astrology with the lens of tropical Western astrology. And to me, it speaks to your soul, you know, the journey that your soul has been on, where it has been, what's it doing here now, and where it's going. So it's very much connected to this energetic signature of all of these different frequencies and cycles moving in the collective. And so, you know, it's definitely going to show up differently for all of us based on what our personal zodiac is. If you're wanting to relate to what your personal Chinese zodiac is as well, it's definitely going to hit differently for someone who is a snake or a horse as opposed to someone who is like a rat or a dog, you know? And then like the elemental energy as well too. I feel like anyone who has this fire energy is really, it's going to really support them. But maybe someone who is more like earthy or watery is like, okay, like I don't really know how to handle it hot in here, you know? But it really just all ties in together because the way I see it is we're all just pieces, unique individual pieces of the same puzzle, you know? And so even though it's going to show up differently for all of us, when we start to put all of the pieces together, it does paint this bigger picture. And that's what's so exciting to explore, you know, how it's showing up for you, how it's showing up for me, but also how it's showing up for all of us as a collective.
That's great. And I feel like that's good for listeners to know as well, because I know typically in the new year, there is a lot of this like pressure, like to start, you know, your New Year's resolutions and goals. And it's like, you got to buckle down, like get on the workout train, start your goals right away. And a lot of people don't align with that. It doesn't feel natural to them, and that's why typically a lot of like resolutions will fall off, or you know, it just won't be as easy to get it done. But that makes sense. We're still in that year of the snake, so it sounds like we have some time to finish shedding those kind of final layers and honor this time as well, which is winter, and like you said, a time for rest and recovery and all that. So looking kind of at just the collective as a whole, from your readings and your insights in general, what kinds of collective lessons does astrology suggest we'll be working through this year?
So I'm really excited to see how it all plays out in 2026. But I would say the big collective lessons and themes that we'll be seeing throughout would be deepening sovereignty and discernment, and also gaining clarity on the roles we play in the collective. So, because we've already mentioned, you know, these big transits with Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries, Aries being the first sign of the zodiac, it really helps us understand, you know, who we are and how we want to show up in the world, basically. And I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting energy within power dynamics. And I think this is definitely going to be showing up personally, interpersonally, collectively, politically, even, but we don't even need to go there today. But again, that discernment of what we've already been saying, you know, what is the work that we've already been doing over the past few years, especially since the pandemic, that has helped us really align with our sense of self and our passions and our purpose, which is also very Aries oriented too, because it is a fire sign. So anything that really does enliven us and ignite that fire within us, that's what we're really going to want to fuel this year and for us moving forward. And, you know, a lot of this isn't just going to be happening within 2026. We're going to be seeing Saturn in Aries until 2028. And then, you know, Neptune spends about 15 years in a sign. So, you know, Neptune's going to be here to stay in Aries. But yeah, so we have time, you know, we have time and we've had time to really work out all of these energies. And so this is where we're going to kind of see them being put to the test and exercising these new ways of being and aligning ourselves with, you know, who we really are, what we're wanting to do here, you know, what positive changes we're here to make, and who's really like on our team doing that. as well. And that's really where the discernment is going to come in as well too, because like I said, not everyone is going to be riding this ride. And it's up to us to really pay attention to the signs of, oh, wow, like I've really grown and changed in these areas. And I'm starting to notice who in my life are maybe still in the same patterns and cycles and maybe haven't had the same interest or values and the same type of personal development that, you know, we might be focused on. So it's really important to pay attention to who in our life is still moving in the same direction at the same pace as we are, and like also discernment about what we're going to do about it. You know, does that mean that we need to reevaluate these types of interactions and situations? Do we need to release them altogether? Do we need to create space to have more conversations about the differences in between? But yeah, that's going to be the practice in play, is that discernment, but then the sovereignty, really honoring yourself, honoring your truth, and staying in alignment with who you are, because that's what's going to help us move forward with the most authenticity and integrity. And you know, through all of this energy, we will be gaining clarity on the roles we're playing in the collective. You know, who am I, how am I showing up, and who else is showing up how, you know? And so there's going to be a lot of that energy, that it's going to be really important for us to pay attention to.
Okay, awesome. So it sounds kind of like then there might be more alignment collectively, like people kind of living more in alignment with their true selves and maybe their personal missions. Is that kind of the vibe?
I absolutely think that's the vibe. And yeah, like I said, it's not for everyone. You know, we haven't all signed up for the pioneering, trailblazing, like co-creating the new world. You know, there's some people here who have chosen to really stay in old patterns and cycles, because we are seeing like a rise in a new world, but also the collapse of an old world. And not everyone is going to be on that side of history, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I totally got you, because you actually shifted into the next question I had for you, which was if there were any major planetary shifts that are going to like impact systems and social structures. So you kind of already answered that a bit, which, you know, that made me wonder. Yes, a lot of things have been coming to light about what's really going on. Is there anything about the energy from this year that says like, well, I guess you just answered that. We can't really know. Like, are we gonna do anything about it? Or is it just gonna be like, oh dang, that's not good. And then we just move on. Because I feel like that's how it's felt. Like that's how things have felt.
Yeah, absolutely. I can absolutely expand on that. So, you know, we've been talking a lot about the Saturn and Neptune shift into Aries, but another really big transit that we're going to be experiencing is Uranus moving into Gemini, which is another planet that we already got a prequel for in 2025, and then it did a cute little retrograde back into Taurus. But on April 26th, we're or excuse me, on April 25th, we'll be seeing Uranus in Gemini. And I think that's really going to shift a lot and impact systems and social structures completely. And yeah, like we're saying, we kind of already have started to experience a little bit of this, but Uranus is another one of our outer generational planets. It's a lot slower moving. Its cycle is about 83-ish years around the entire zodiac, like all 12 of the signs. And so it spends about 8-ish years in each sign. So this is going to be another long transit. And yeah, in April, I think all Taurus placements are going to be feeling some major relief, because Uranus is really our planet of disruption and chaos and sudden change for the sake of evolution. It's kind of the energy of, you know, if you were going to rip the tablecloth off the table just to see how the place settings were to fall, That's kind of the energy of Uranus. And it has been in Taurus, which is our fixed earth, which is very like grounded and steady, and is probably out of all 12 of the zodiac signs, like does not like change the most. And so we've had this change maker, chaotic planet in Taurus that has kind of been feeling like taking a like a jackhammer to the foundations, you know. But we'll also be able to see how this is a gift and a blessing, because we have been needing to clear space and really check the foundations, especially because Taurus relates to our values as well. So really just investigating what is the most important to us and have we laid a solid foundation to build from these values. That's kind of the energy that we'll be coming out of, that we've been experiencing for the last 8-ish years, and into Gemini, which really does bring in these social structures. Gemini is our mutable air of the zodiac, and anytime we have a mutable sign, it's always at the end of the season. It prepares us for change. It's always very adaptable and flexible and like going with the flow. It's very fluid. And air signs are very much about communication and our thoughts and our ideas, and how we're able to exchange these thoughts and ideas and express ourselves in these new like perspectives, and so it's going to be really interesting for all of us collectively experiencing this Uranus and Gemini shift, because this is going to impact our social structures, how we relate to one another, the ways that we communicate, the ideas that come from all of these different interactions. And I'm already starting to feel it and see it. And a lot of the astrologers that I follow and pay attention to have been predicting this too. We're really entering this phase of like an exodus from social media. We've kind of had like the novelty is really worn off. And I mean, definitely for me, I was here when social media was all introduced and everything, able to kind of experience that rise and fall of like all of the different ways that we've used social media, to share about our personal life and to connect with people all over the world, and, using it for business and, you name it, all different types of ways. So it's kind of like, okay, we get it now. We know what this tool is for. We also know that it can be a very big distraction, especially since we are feeding our own personal algorithm. So it's feeding us kind of whatever we put into it. Right. And so I think a lot of mindfulness around of how much energy we're giving to social media and being online, and hopefully paying attention to how it makes us feel, like if we have an intention and we're very mindful and aware when we're using it as a tool.
I feel like I see it happening like slowly already, like people just caring less, which is good in my opinion, but yeah.
I think it's completely okay, and we're going to also see more ways that it can be of use and supportive to us. But on the other end as well, noticing how maybe it's not really supportive and it's not serving, and it has really taken us away from our entire life that's in front of us, and how we have been like distracting ourselves and creating these distortions and illusions in our mind, the way that we think, the way that we communicate, the way we interact, all of these themes are going to be very in the forefront as we're moving into this year, and especially after we see this shift with Uranus too.
Amazing. Well, I'm fired up personally. Something's about to happen, and I know it's going to be for the good, especially in April, maybe, you're saying.
I'm really excited to see it and be a part of it as well. Like, like we've been talking about this whole time, like there are these really big shifts that we're all collectively feeling because of these outer generational planets in the shift. So it is going to be really interesting to see how it all unfolds, and yeah, like the part that we play in it all too. Definitely. Yeah, as we navigate through these different shifts and these timelines.
Yes, well, thank you. That was awesome. So, shifting gears, getting a little bit more specific. So, I know that, there's our whole birth chart, right? So you can pick whatever just is calling to you and feels more aligned. But basically, if you could give us just like a little overview of some themes that will show up for each of the signs. I don't know if it's like, maybe you specify like this is if your sun, moon, or whatever is in this sign. However you see feels fit and like the easiest to understand, I guess you could say.
Yes, I would absolutely love to. And I feel like this is where it really starts to get juicy. I would say, this really relates to any of the placements that you have in any of these signs, because I think what's so beautiful about astrology is we actually are all 12 of the signs, similarly to what I was saying earlier about, being unique puzzle pieces to the same puzzle. That's kind of like we're also our own unique puzzle where we have these different zodiac signatures and energies that present themselves in different ways, but when we put them all together, we represent the entire zodiac. So I will go in the order of the signs, starting with Aries and ending with Pisces, and I'll just share a little bit of like a mini cosmic forecast of what you can expect, or like what really major transits you might be experiencing this year, and how that might impact these placements for all of us. So yeah, I think this can go beyond the sun, moon, and rising. This could be your Mercury, your Mars, your Venus, your Jupiter, any of the planets. Yeah, and also the houses as well too, but that'll be a whole other episode to get into houses. Anyway, okay, so very exciting. So for Aries, I'm really excited because we've been talking about Aries a little bit today with the Saturn and the Neptune transit. So it is giving a little bit of like main character energy. The thing with both of these planets in Aries is Saturn is actually kind of one of our like densest planets energetically. It's kind of like it's kind of like a fun sucker. Like, it's really here to teach us our hard life lessons. It wants us to learn. So it's very like disciplined and all about authority and, just really wanting to teach us where the guardrails are basically, but in order for us to learn how to step into our life purpose. And so I feel like Aries is going to feel challenged in that way, because they are so independent and rebellious in their own spirit. They really like to be in charge and the leaders of everything. So I think working with Saturn, challenging, but also a really beautiful opportunity to hold that discipline and energy to say, like, how can you really put this fuel of your passion that you carry and this intensity into something meaningful and worthwhile, really. And I think it's going to be really great having Neptune there to support too, because Neptune represents our planet. It's the planet that represents our dreams and our ideals and our fantasies, and also our subconscious mind as well. So I can definitely see Aries really working with their spiritualities to support them and really focusing on what the best case scenario is, so they have this momentum and this fuel to take action on what their highest dreams are and their highest calling is. I would say just be careful and mindful, because Neptune does represent illusions, and Aries really does like to act first and think later, to just make sure that you are creating space before you take action, to make sure that like what you're really acting on is, first of all worth it, but like, is it real? Is it substantial? So there could be a little bit of like disorientation and confusion in this mode, but because we have the teacher planet Saturn there, like anything that really comes through on your path is here to really teach you and guide you if you stay open to learning. For Taurus, we already kind of talked a little bit about Taurus with this Uranus. We're really going to be seeing this relief, so just like doubling back on what I shared earlier, really reinforcing your foundations based on what your values are. Hopefully you're going to start to feel your nervous system calming down, because the planet of change and disruption is moving out of Taurus. And so I think anything that you can do to really support your nervous system, to calm yourself, to soothe yourself, to give yourself comfort, and knowing that you've had this whole period of reevaluating what is most important, valuable, and meaningful to you, you're entering this new period with a new perspective. And hopefully now you're able to continue to build on a firm foundation based on what is most important for you. So I'm excited for Taurus and for this transit. For Gemini, it's going to be really interesting because Uranus is passing the baton from Taurus into Gemini. And so I actually seeing this being very supportive for Gemini because it is so mutable and because it is so airy, and because Uranus does also love change and shaking things up. So I can see a lot of like breakthroughs coming in for Gemini, lots of like really like lightning fire aha moments, really fresh new ideas and perspectives. But I would say if you're able to just kind of like roll with the punches and like move with this energy and lean into just this natural quality that Gemini has of staying in motion, you will be supported with these Uranus energies because it supports you, you know, in the movement, in the change, in the breakthroughs, in the newness and the ideas. So I think if you're really able to recognize that that's what's happening and that's what's in your field, it can really act as a strength and a support for you to move forward. So for Cancer, we have had Jupiter in Cancer since summer of 2025. It's going to be really beautiful once we hit Cancer season at the beginning of the summer to see how Jupiter has really supported you. Jupiter is our largest planet in the solar system, and it really represents abundance and expansion and good luck and fortune. It's a very benevolent planet. It's very like positive, high vibes, good vibes, everything. And so I think everything that has supported Cancer in this way has been, you know, deepening and expanding emotional capacity, connections with family, loved ones, your home. Yeah, I feel like if you've really been able to take advantage of this Jupiter energy throughout this year, and into the summer of 2026, all of these different areas in Cancer's life, I can see having like a new upgrade or the next level or some sort of expansion that has been really supportive. Yeah, like we're kind of in the middle of this transit right now. And by Cancer season, we'll be seeing the shift. And that shift will shift us into Leo season. And for Leos, Jupiter will be moving into Leo in the summer on June 30th. So that is something to look out for all of us, you know, based on what our Leo placements are. And so we're going to be feeling that luck and that expansion in the sign of Leo. And I think the best way to work with this energy and pay attention to it is to allow yourself to be fully heart-centered, leading with your heart and what's like truly authentic to you. Leo has been getting a really interesting like flavor or like seasoning because we've had Pluto opposing Leo in its opposite sign of Aquarius. And so this opposition is a very long transit. It's going to last until the year 2043. Because Pluto is our furthest planet from the sun, and so it is our slowest moving. So yeah, it's like a slow burn type of energy, like slow burn. But really what this opposition is teaching Leo and all of us with Leo placements is to just really take the mask off, recognize your role in everyone else's life around you. You know, I think Leo is really used to being in the spotlight and having like all eyes on them and everything. But I think Pluto is helping them really deepen that connection to themselves and their connections to other people. So we're not really only seeing things like at face value or on the surface level. I think there's really like a deepening for Leo that is still pretty new. You know, we've only been experiencing this for like a year now, but it's still new because like we're saying, it's like a slow burn energy. But the more you lead into your heart and allowing yourself to guide with love, and be guided with love, and really, like I said, like unmask and just show your true self. And you know, that might look like allowing yourself to be more vulnerable or showing up in service for other people or just really kind of taking a step back and observing what's going on around you before you really take action and present yourself in a certain way. Those will all be really supportive for Leo this year, and especially once we hit that time of year as well too. For Virgo, it's so interesting. We have had the South Node in Virgo since January of 2025, and it's going to be shifting fully out by the summer of 2026 as well. This is really important because this is where we've been experiencing our past few rounds of eclipses. Anytime we're working with the South Node, it's all about what we're releasing and what's ready to become part of our past. And what I've been saying with Virgo in relation to this placement and these transits are, there's been this like stripping away and cleansing, purification energy of what's just no longer serving Virgo in terms of like rigidity and perfectionism and judgment, criticism, things like, for Virgo, and we're dealing with like the past life with the South Node too, is, it kind of shows up like, oh, well, everything has to be perfect because it's like life and death dependent, because these energies have shown up, previously maybe as like a surgeon or someone who works in healthcare, where it's like, no, we literally have to make sure these incisions are just so, or someone could bleed out on the table, but the beautiful thing is we're not really experiencing that in this timeline when it comes to this Virgo energy moving with the South Node. So how can we let go of our grip a little bit, allow ourselves to breathe, and just really leave more space for spirit to come in, and really deepening our trust in the divine and how we can really be supportive, because, if we're kind of stuck in like a control mode, we're kind of blocking our blessings in a way. So I think that's really what will be helpful for Virgo, is to just release what's not serving and trust that what is meant for you is for you, and find peace in that as well too. So for Libra, it's going to be very interesting over the next few years, honestly, because all of the stuff we've been talking about with the Saturn and Neptune and Aries is actually going to be opposing Libra. And so I think this is going to help Libra, kind of like we were talking about collectively earlier, really clarifying that sovereignty and that discernment for themselves. How much weight do they carry in their relationships? Are they on themselves? And then how are they focused on who they are and how they show up in the dynamic of like the me and the we? Because, Libra represents the scales. And so it really always does have that balancing act of, how am I supporting myself? How am I supporting the other? How is the other supporting me? So I think if Libra is really able to clarify all of those questions and reflect on what is most in alignment for them, when Libra feels in alignment, then they are in alignment and harmony with everyone else around them too. So it's constantly that balancing act, but I think it's going to be a really beautiful opportunity for Libra to get clear on, like I said, like the weight they carry for themselves and then what they bring to the table for everybody else. And I think that will really help Libra, when they're releasing patterns of people pleasing, the inability to say no or to set boundaries. I think the more that they're really able to focus on themselves in this way, but also in relation to other people, because I think with Libra, it's kind of hard to have one without the other. That's just how they are designed. But I think that's what's going to really help them. And hopefully releasing, any relationships or dynamics that are really taking from them, that are just out of alignment, imbalance. Yeah, just not serving. For Scorpio, such an interesting time to be alive. Luckily, there's not any like huge major transits going through Scorpio, except for we will be having, a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio in the fall around Scorpio season. So that's kind of like the only thing to really look out for and pay attention to. I'll share about that more in a little bit. I think the biggest theme for Scorpio right now is transformation. And I'm a Scorpio, so I can definitely speak for myself here, but we definitely have these seasons and these cycles of the birth, death, rebirth, evolution basically. And so I think if Scorpio is really able to honor each phase and just honestly submit to the process, you know, allowing themselves to be transformed through that process, allowing the space for the things to die and be released and removed from their life that are just holding them down, holding them back. You know, side note, we're the only ones that hold ourselves back for everyone across the board. Like the only thing in our way is us. But being able to recognize that, making peace with that, and releasing that, and then also allowing the space for the rebirth too, because I think Scorpio is really able to hone in on their power when they just allow that space for that transformation and that rebirth. So I think just keep doing what you're doing and make sure you're recognizing what is needed based on where you are in that space of, or in those phases of the cycle of transformation. For Sagittarius, it's going to be really interesting because we've been talking about Uranus moving into Gemini, which means Uranus will be opposing Sagittarius. It's so interesting because I feel like Uranus can also really support Sagittarius because Sagittarius is our mutable fire sign. And so, again, that mutability is the ending of the fall, the transition of seasons, and like really wanting to keep things moving. That fire energy is also very like hot and chaotic and also needs to feel free. And so it's going to be a really interesting dynamic with this opposition because there might be some type of restraint that is introduced for Sagittarius where they want to be completely untethered and explore the entire world or learn these new philosophies, that type of thing. I feel like they're also going to feel this pull, kind of like an anchor, really needing something to help them stay grounded in the midst of it all. And so that's going to be the energy that Sagittarius is going to be working with this year, especially after April when we have this Uranus transit. But yeah, just kind of like allowing the duality in the space for both, allowing yourself to feel free and liberated and knowing what really lights you up in that manner, but also allowing yourself the space to be grounded and, like, dare I say it, sit still. I think for Sagittarius especially, they can feel very restless, when there's not a lot of movement, there's not a lot of change. And I don't think that that's going to be the problem. I feel like there's going to be plenty of movement and change, but I think without having some sense of stability and yeah, like that solid anchor energy, yeah, you could, completely lose it. But like you're going to be really out there, and I think it's going to be really important to have something to balance both polarities on that end of the spectrum. For Capricorn, it is such an interesting time for Capricorn. I feel like Capricorn is in this like rebranding and like rediscovery of self, honestly. I really encourage Capricorn to think about, what their North Star is and what really guides them and catapults them forward, because Capricorn is traditionally very ambitious and goal oriented. Like we were talking a little bit about it earlier in relation to like the season that we're in right now. But what is that guiding light? And, what is that fuel to your fire? And when I think about it, it's kind of like, oh, like we work so hard and we get all the promotions and we get the raises and all of this stuff. And like, and we work our whole life dedicating, grinding ourselves to the bone basically in hopes that one day we'll retire, and then what does retirement look like? You get to travel more, you get to spend more time with your family, you get to, focus on your creativity or, whatever it is, but how are you able to bring that sense of I've done my work and now I get to rest for the rest of my life? How can you bring that into the present now? We don't have to really wait decades to experience pleasure and joy and fulfillment in life. And I feel like we're shifting out of this idea that we've all been sold of, the stability of working like a solid job and, putting in your hours, getting your paycheck. And then like, yeah, finally you get to like hang up your lab coat and, be free. How can you free yourself now? And I think that even just introducing these ideas might kind of rattle some cages a little bit, but it's really important to look at because the world is shifting, and it's going to be really important for the systems and structures that have been built that are supportive to all of us to remain intact. And I think Capricorn is very supportive in making sure that it happens, but also allowing themselves to relieve themselves and release, any of those systems and structures that are really not serving to the whole, and what they can introduce in that space that's being created too. Like the message that I've been saying for Capricorn for a little while now is it's time for tenure. What would that look like if you didn't have to go to work tomorrow? What would it look like if you had all of the money in the world and the job is done and you did a great job too? What would be left in your life? So I think really prioritizing that visualization and that imagination and really calling it forth and starting to act on it now. You don't have to wait until, you're almost dead to enjoy your life fully. For Aquarius, I love this because I've been saying for Aquarius that they are on the front lines, basically for all of us. And that's because we have Pluto in Aquarius. It's been there since November of 2024, and it's going to be there until 2043. And even though this planet is the furthest from the sun and it's very slow moving, it has a very subtle energy. It's still very powerful. And it also represents that birth, death, rebirth cycle that I was mentioning for Scorpio because Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. So anyway, we have this planet in Aquarius, and they're on the front lines now because Aquarius has always been very innovative, out of the box thinkers, but have also been kind of like outcasts. It's like the weirdo or the oddball, the odd man out or something like that. And in a way, maybe like not taken super seriously. But we're needing this energy from Aquarius now when we're starting to recognize like, wow, look at how everything is right now and how much these things are not working for us. Like, does anyone else have any like new, fresh ideas? And we're needing Aquarius to kind of like, well, have you thought about this? Well, have you tried this? Oh, well, I thought about this. Like, would you like to give that a try? So I think the more Aquarius is really able to embrace and accept their individuality and their unique qualities and know that there is an innate value to these characteristics that they embody and carry with them, the more that you're really able to embrace these parts of yourself and also offer them to the collective or to your communities or, whatever circles you're running in, and really saying like, hey, I know that I have these really good gifts and it might not have been a great time beforehand, but now I think we're all ready to receive. So yeah, I really just encourage Aquarius to be themselves and continue to just do their thing because we're needing it. We're needing that energy and that spirit. And then finally, we have the North Node in Pisces. Or finally, we have Pisces, and we've had the North Node there, which runs on the axis with the South Node in Virgo. And so for Pisces, it's going to be really big because we're having Saturn and Neptune moving out of Pisces, and we've been experiencing this collectively for the past few years. So I'm really excited for Pisces to come into themselves in this new way of like feeling very complete, feeling very whole, gaining the lessons and the blessings from Saturn and what it has taught us, especially around setting boundaries and also allowing our spirituality to move through us and our creativity as well too. I think it's been really supportive that we've had Neptune in Pisces because Neptune is Pisces. But it's going to be really exciting. It's going to be really exciting for this shift. And when we have the North Node represents destiny. So with all of this juicy Pisces energy is like, okay, like how are you living in your destiny? Like it's time. we've had all of these supportive planets come through your field, and it's really time to present yourself and, yeah, just move with the current, with spirit guiding you and with your creativity as well. The more, the better.
Yes, lots of good things coming. Thank you for that overview. That was really good. And then I'll be sure to put the timestamps too. That way people can, if they really want to get to their nitty gritty, they can find it. Awesome. And so you've talked about a lot of timelines and just different points throughout the year. Are there any other particular months or seasons that stand out to you this year that you feel like we should know about?
So I feel like the first half of the year is going to be pretty eventful because we're having these major outer planet shifts. Neptune on January 26th, Saturn February 13th, Uranus moving into Gemini April 25th, and Leo moving June 3rd. Yeah, it's going to be, hopefully energy that does feel familiar because a lot of these outer planets have already been there before since 2025, and then they did their retrograde, so they're coming back in. So I think we'll be able to recognize the shift, and it'll be really supportive and important for us to, know that it's happening, to really support us. And, we're also going to have 3 Mercury retrogrades in 2026. The first one is already coming up at the end of February, from February 26th to March 20th. And then in the summer, from June 29th to July 3rd. And then in the fall, October 20th through November 13th. So a few things to note when we're dealing with Mercury retrograde energy. This year, it's all going to happen in the water signs. So that means it's going to heavily impact Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, and all of our placements there. But really what that means is it's going to be highlighting our emotions and our intuition and really our capacities for both of those things. So it's always good to know that that's what's on the horizon. Whenever there's a Mercury retrograde, my personal rule of thumb is to block out about 7 weeks for each. The Mercury retrograde is really just 3 weeks of retrograde, but there's 2 weeks pre-shadow and 2 weeks post-shadow. And the shadows can sometimes hit differently depending on what degrees they're transiting and what degrees you have in your chart. So I always make sure that I have plenty of room blocked off every time we have one of these events, because you never know when you need a little bit more time to process or retrace your steps and get clear on what you need before you move forward. So yeah, it's going to be overall a very eventful year. Definitely the first 6 months of the year when we're having these major transits, and then when we have these different pockets of Mercury retrogrades throughout the year, honestly. So lots to pay attention to, lots to look out for, but it's always great to know so that we are better prepared and equipped to navigate whatever is on its way.
Definitely. And it obviously would help to know where you have your signs and what planets and things like that, so you can see how this will impact you. So if listeners don't know where to find their birth chart information already, what kind of tools do you suggest they use?
So I have a few tools that I can suggest for anyone who is just getting started with their journey with astrology, or wherever they are on their journey. I would suggest starting with Cafe Astrology. And honestly, just Google searching Cafe Astrology birth chart, and it'll pull the link up. And all you need is your birth time, your birth date, and your birth location. And I love it because it's a free software, and it shows you your birth chart, but it also gives you a very detailed description of each of your placements. So I think it's a really beautiful way to get started, and a great way to pace yourself too, because I know when working with astrology, it can be very overwhelming. So it is a journey for sure, but I think Cafe Astrology does a really great job of summing it all up in a very digestible way that's not too confronting or overwhelming. I would also suggest, if anyone is wanting to learn in real time, I have online classes for the new and full moons. And so those are bi-weekly. and they're available for drop-in and also on a membership basis as well on my Patreon. And I also have developed a tool called the Astrograph, which is really exciting because I've had the opportunity to share that with you already. But it's really basically a physical representation of your birth chart, and it's meant to be set up that's customized in order of your own personal birth chart placements. And it's really exciting because you're really able to follow along with yourself in real time as the sun moves through each sign. And it's a really great way to break your birth chart down in bite-sized, digestible segments. So again, it's not everything all at once, but it's like, okay, what season are we in? What is the sun? What sign is the sun in? And how is that showing up for me personally and currently? So those are really great ways to start working with astrology as an applied practice. And yeah, really great tools to use to help guide you through.
Definitely. It all helps it make sense. And then it's just so fun. It's so fun to learn. It's like learning a new language. I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Kat, for being on the show. You mentioned Moon Valley Astrology. So where can the listeners connect with you if they want like a one-on-one with you, or just to find any of your events in the area if they live in Phoenix?
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a really fun time breaking down the forecast for the year and also what all the signs can expect for this year coming ahead. Great. The best ways to connect with me are on Instagram at Moon Valley Astrology. You can also find me on Patreon at Moon Valley Astrology. And I usually keep my link tree very current, my link in bio on Instagram with all of my upcoming events. The link to my Patreon is there. And yeah, anything that I have on the horizon is usually you can find in my link in bio on Instagram. You can also send me a direct message to get connected. Yeah, you can also book a reading with me too from my link in bio on Instagram as well.
Amazing. Awesome. I'll be sure to put all of that information in the episode notes. Well, that's all that I have for you today, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. If you like this episode, be sure to leave a review and share this podcast. You never know who in your life might resonate with it. Chat with you later.